in the month of May. I'm tickled pink that things are rosy and
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS speed risk. Contact, you're in orbit.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting on a hill in a shack in the middle of Cane Creek, Arkansas. And these are mossy creek bottoms in Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. It is October the 1st. Thank God, right? This is everybody's favorite month here at the Fringe. It's my favorite month. It's time to get down on Halloween. It's time to face the darks and the shadows and do some trick-or-treating. See, I'm already thinking it's Halloween. It's not even Halloween yet, but I'm just stoked. It's October. Tonight, our guest is Adam Apollo is going to be joining us. Now, this is a very interesting fellow. A very interesting fellow. And the website is adamapollo.com for reference. That's where you're going to want to go during the interview tonight. And we're going to talk about God knows what with him, because he is a very interesting guy, very enlightened individual, and he's looking forward to the future of humanity as we progress in consciousness and unify and do what's best for everybody. And I think it's going to be a very interesting show. Now, I want to thank a couple of people real quick for getting some T-shirts. And you guys, I want to tell all of you guys that have bought T-shirts that I just noticed today. I asked Katrina if she had gotten her shirt yet. And I think it's been like, I don't know, 3 weeks or so since she ordered it. Still hadn't got it. So I looked at the tracking numbers. And the shirts from the shop, they're still just... they're shipped out, and I don't know why USPS is holding them. So if you hadn't got your shirt yet, hit me up and I'll send you the tracking number, and I'll work with you guys and try to figure out what's going on. But thank you all so much for your support. We're live on the Fringe FM 5 nights a week here at 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight, 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday. And I want to thank our sponsors real quick before we get going at getthetea.com. Make sure you stay prepared at preparewiththefriends.com, and the Ferrari of CBD oil, Ancient Life Oil. .com. A big special shout out to the Discord chat over at the Fringe FM. I put up a October Rust channel in there for everybody, so you guys can go in there and play. And what I wanted this to be about was to kind of face the shadow, right? And be open about it. Because the shadow side is usually something that we don't want to talk about. It's something that we hide. But what I find is very interesting and I don't mean you have to go in there and type in that, there's hashtag chat rooms in there, but you don't have to type in there all of your stuff. Just like put up a song or a picture or something that represents it. And I think what you'll find is when we face this stuff, a lot of us can relate to these things and understand. And that's already happening. We're already putting a bunch of stuff in there. So thank you guys, too, over at the Fringe FM chat. I love all of y'all. If you go to the fringe.fm, just click on where it says chat and you can get in there. Calling number is 1-800-588-0335. Also, we are going to be at the Arkansas Paranormal Expo this weekend. And hopefully our new banner will be here on time. So I hope so. But that's where we'll be. I think Pat Fitzhugh is going to be there. Board Camp Crystal Mine. Rick Sitter's going to be there. Yeah, it's going to be a cool time. And if you need, I'm going to say this every night for you UFO folks, keep up with UFOseekers.com for the real deal. Follow them on Twitter for the real info at UFO Seekers. If you've had a sighting, give them a call at 661-UFO-7889. And if you want to see UFO research like you've never seen it before, youtube.com/UFO Seekers. All right. So our guest tonight is Adam Apollo. The website is adamapollo.com. And Adam Apollo has offered insights on global transitions, physics, technology, human spirituality, and the future as a leadership ambassador at the White House and multiple summits at the United Nations and at conferences and festivals around the world. After having a vision of the universe as a fractal hologram at the age of 15, he extensively studied a wide variety of branches in theoretical astrophysics, completing major research papers on the potential interface between consciousness and the physics of space-time. Wow. I thought for a second I was the only guy in the world that used the word interface, but no. And the physics of space-time, it just threw me off guard. And he graduated high school by the time he graduated high school. Now, after organizing 2 prayer runs for world peace with indigenous elders and youth and holding ceremonies with the White Buffalo Peace Pipe, Adam Apollo had a direct physical contact experience with an extraterrestrial ambassador in the middle of the desert. He was then introduced to 73 ambassadors of a galactic council through astral bilocation. And since then, he had countless contact experiences, called and connected with hundreds of starship crews, and developed a comprehensive knowledge of many species who he's had interacted with humanity. They've interacted with humanity over the millennia. He is the founder of the Unify movement and several education and technology-based companies and organizations, as well as a faculty member and lead systems architect for several international online academies. These include the Resonance Academy for Unified Physics, the Guardian Alliance Academy for Self-Mastery, and the Visionary Arts Academy. He currently has over 6,000 active students of all ages from around the world. Adam Apollo is dedicated to achieving a sustainable and thriving interplanetary culture. And, dude, that's probably one of the most impressive bios I've ever read on the show, actually. And it's
well,
not even... It's so
I think
crazy,
it's a pretty old
man.
one.
You're like a superhero or something. That's what it feels like.
I appreciate that.
Like a Batman. I don't know. But
I do have respect for Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Superhero without powers.
Yes. So tell me what this is about. Tell me about your awakening experience in the desert. I gotta know about that first. Everybody likes to save that stuff for last. Not me. I want to know about it now. What happened?
Yeah. Well, it's a long story, and to be honest, I don't usually get into all the details with it unless I can go through full context building, because I mean, the reality is like people have crazy experiences, but unless you get to know somebody and you have a context for the way they think, their types of ways of processing things they've been through in their lives, how they've learned how to interpret the world, people sound crazy. Like I've had many friends who have had experiences, and I was like, wow, that's a crazy experience. But if I didn't have a context for who they were and known them for years and known them for their work in science, or known them for their political work, or, the on the ground projects, the way they run their companies, I wouldn't have enough trust to actually have a sense of belief in what they were telling me. And it's actually because I've had so many amazing people like this in my life who have come into my life and who have gone through really powerful experiences and yet are some of the most grounded, smart, successful, applied people in the world, that I've been able to really do the work of what I call the transpersonal psychology approach to all this stuff, where you're really looking at all of these different experiences that different people are having, and you're anchoring a sense of what is true by assembling the knowledge of all of these different people and all of these different direct experiences and seeing what overlaps, seeing what fits. And so I imagine to some extent that the people listening to your show are also, whether they know it or not, they're actually doing this project themselves too, because they're hearing all of these different perspectives, different people's experiences. And from that, they're able to piece together a sense of the truth. And that sense of truth that they gain from hearing all these different people is also very greatly based on your credibility in their eyes, the way that you approach things, the way that you question, the kinds of people that you invite on your show. So I think building rapport is really, really essential. And for me, in that experience out in the desert, there's so many things that happened that led me to that moment, that going straight there, I think, would cheapen the expression of the reality of the experience. And because the first piece of what happened to me out there was dealing with past life trauma and clearing major stuff with my mother and father from a time period on Earth that many people call Atlantis. And, to get there, you got to first start and say, well, first of all, who believes in past lives? How do you know you had a past life? What makes you think that it wasn't actually a past life and not just something that you saw on a movie or a book that you read? How do you know that these things are real, right? Mm-hmm. So I got to start from there, which is what is real. How do we approach the study of what is real in our experience? Because everybody's had a crazy freaking experience they can't explain, right?
Sure, yeah.
So how do we study that? How do we approach these experiences and actually get to know them and get to know the depth of truth inside of them? And the first step, I already spoke about one of the facets of it, which is actually getting to know other people and putting the experiences together. But the first step is actually getting to know yourself and getting to know that sense inside of your own body that knows how to tell you when something is right and is resonating and feels good and feels like truth versus something that sounds off. It feels non-resonant. It's
now, are you talking
sticky.
About when you hear something, like if I told you a story about something about my experience, you would go off what you're feeling about it, right? Because I think I could relate to that for sure.
Well, what's interesting is that it starts with the feeling in the self through the action of saying something true or saying a lie. So, okay, everybody's had this experience, right? That moment where somebody asked you something, your mom, your parents, your girlfriend, you name it. Yeah. They asked you something. And if you tell them the truth, it's going to be bad. So
I deal with
your
that
heartbeat's
constantly.
racing. You've got this like clench, this little feeling in your belly. There's this vibration, and you say something, and it's not true, but maybe you're really good at keeping a straight face, right?
Right. Yeah.
But internally, your body, it's as if it's weak, right? Yes. There's a weakness,
right?
And there's actually this really interesting practice that everybody can learn. It's, kinesthesiology, and it's just muscle testing. And what happens is when you say no, your muscles become weak. When you say yes, they become strong. Mm-hmm. If I say my name is George, my muscles become weak. If I say my name is Adam Apollo, my muscles become strong. And so inside our bodies, we actually have this automatic electrical sense of something that is accurate and true and something that's not. And getting to know that feeling inside of ourselves is kind of step one. But once you get to know that feeling inside yourself, which I did when I went through some interesting stuff as a kid. My stepmother passed away in a car accident. My dad's life was pretty shattered. My stepbrothers went crazy. We traveled across the country, got robbed halfway through, lost all of my stuff on the way. Spent a semester with my mom, basically decided I was going to stop bugging the girl that I was in love with and had been in love with for years, because I was just like, this is pointless. And ended up, going to visit my dad in Hawaii because he moved there. And while I was there, my mom ended up moving from northern New Mexico to western North Carolina. And I would never see all these friends again that I grew up with from the time I was 2 until I was 11, all my real friends. And so I end up going to North Carolina, and I have no friends. I've got some cousins, and I was just like, what, how is anybody going to know if what I tell them is the truth about my life or not?
Yeah. Because
who even cares?
Yeah. You don't have a bond or a relationship. Nobody knows you for real.
Nobody knows me. Right. Yeah. Nobody knows me. So I could be like, well, when I was little, I had a train that ran around my house. It was like, no, that's what Mr. Rogers had. Just any example of something. And so, there was a couple things that I said, and one of them when I was that age was I said that somebody asked me if I was a virgin, and I said, no. It's a classic, middle school thing, yeah. New kid. Right. He's like, no, I'm not a virgin.
What are you,
right?
a virgin?
Nobody's,
yeah,
exactly. No, and it's already a thing anyway. Right. And I had older stepbrothers that had lots of sex and invited me into spaces where they were, with girls and stuff. I knew a lot about sex. But I hadn't had intercourse myself.
Sure.
But for me, I had enough knowledge that when people asked me all these questions, I could easily answer them. But the more that I kept this story up, the more I created this feeling in myself that I was just – it was as if there was this hollow, as if I wasn't real. And it wasn't even as if it didn't even matter who I was as a person. All that mattered was this story, this shell, this mask that I was putting on the outside. And, damn, when you get to feel that and you get to know that, and every kid does, everybody's got something they lied about when they were little or something they lied about at some point, and they kept it for so long. But there's a breaking point, and it's literally it will crush you the longer you hold a lie.
Right.
And as a brief kind of tangent point, this is why the entire system is crumbling right now, because there's so much, as I learned in high school and into college, there is so much of our education system, so much of our political system, so much of the systems on the planet that are serious lies. And they're crumbling under the weight and the pressure of their own abstraction from the truth. And so I got to know the difference between a lie and a truth really well when I was little. So that's where I started. And then when I was
Can I ask you
in
a
high
question,
school, I had
real quick before we move on from that.
Yeah.
When you say you got to know the difference between a lie and a truth, I can totally relate to that. But what happens is it gets hard to deal with because you realize everybody's lying. And when I say everybody's lying, I don't mean everybody's a liar, but people lie about things. You realize people lie about a lot of things, and and it's hard to deal with. So did you have any issues with that once you learned that, or did you just kind of say, okay, I got this now. I'm a lie detector. Let's do this.
Well, I had to face some of my own stuff, and it's a lifelong journey. Everybody has to go through periods of time where they may separate from the sense of truth in themselves and lose themselves, whether that's in a marriage that's not working, which was true for me for, years, or, in relationships of all kinds, or in our business, what we think it is we're supposed to be doing in the world, or we're lying to ourselves and saying, "Oh, no, we can't. We have to do this job, even though we hate it, because if we don't, then, who knows? We'll lose our house, we'll lose everything." And so we tell ourselves lies all the time. And this is a journey that everybody has to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But, at different phases of my life and in different contexts, I kind of came up against a wave of the falsehood so strong. And this is what happened to me in high school, is I was like, man, there's all these holes in science. There's all these holes in all these things that they're telling me in school. And I had some serious questions. I was like, how the heck is it that you could feel it when somebody's looking at you from across the room? How is it possible I could think of somebody and they call me on the phone, on the landline? Where do all these stories come from, these martial artists that had these like super abilities? I've been a martial artist since I was a little kid, and just innately, massively interested in it and wanting to do it all the time and wanting to practice with my friends all the time. But I was fascinated by kung fu movies and stories and mythologies that I found of like people doing incredible things. And I was like, how is this possible? And how is it that we don't have any science that can explain these things?
Right.
And this is what led me to personal self-discovery with one of my bros, basically figuring out that I have this vibratory energy field around my body that is actually flexible, that fluctuates, that is adaptable to my consciousness, that moves with my intention and my consciousness. And, as a 15-year-old kid, discovering this kind of vibrational field between my hands and between my fingertips and seeing this weird fluid around me, totally sober, just a kid, just exploring, doing a basic practice that I discovered later is an ancient technique in Qigong and Tai Chi. And I discovered Qi, that there's this real field, and I had no idea what I just found. I mean, I'd like to say that it was like finding the Force. It's kind of a funny joke, but it's really true. As a kid that age, you're just like, holy, what is this,
Right.
And I started going to these massive dance parties, giant, what we call rave parties, but they're huge dance parties. Atlanta and Charlotte and Raleigh.
Raving before, absolutely.
Totally into electronic music, and I had older friends who were DJs. They spun drum and bass and trance and breaks. And I'm 15, 16 going with 18-year-olds to these parties. And I'm noticing that people are literally dancing with energy.
Yeah.
And, there's the trick of dancing with an energy ball, and people are like doing it. But you will see the difference when someone is doing it and they're just doing it for show, like they're just moving their arms around, and somebody's actually
just
moving
with it.
a chi ball. And you can feel it. And when you watch a break dancer, when you watch one that's really good, you actually can feel as if they're lifting a plane off the surface of the ground that's making it easier for them to literally almost float above the ground while they're dancing. And I started noticing a lot of these people and kids were telepathic. They're talking to each other telepathically, like, and I'm realizing I'm doing it with my crew. Like I get a signal. I'm like, oh yeah, they're outside right now. I go outside. There they are. Like boom, right there.
That's so wild, man. Because when I went raving, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like I went to on the Love Kids scene back in, I think it was like, I want to say 2001, maybe 2002. Yeah. And, you got the rave party, then the after party, but I know there's a lot of drugs that goes around in there too, right? Acid, X, stuff like that. Oh, yeah. There just is. But I will say that.
No doubt about it.
I did see and feel what you were talking about, though, a few times, and I always thought it was, is this because I'm on this stuff, or is my brain open to this stuff, and I'm actually witnessing it now? And everybody does walk around with this kind of stare, like when they look at you, you almost do read each other. It is really wild.
Well, I was lucky in the sense that I discovered this for myself first. And then I ended up going to these places, and then I started seeing confirmations. And, you know, I remember it was a few parties in when I was first given, somebody gave me MDMA, right, which is popularly ecstasy, although usually it's cut with weird shit or whatever. Right. But this was pure MDMA. It was really nice. It was like, you know, a couple of my friends were like, just trust me, just try this. So I did it, and what I usually do is I just go and I dance and I start doing martial arts. I start weaving energy around my body. I would just create, right, with my body. And that was what I got so much joy in, going to these big dance parties. And in this particular experience of using this medicine, I noticed that all that was happening was I had wider and more extended senses. So where I was previously able to kind of feel a tingle of a person moving over there 10 feet away from me, now I could kind of feel all the different layers of people all the way to the wall. And I noticed that I could also tune my sense. So if I built up a wave of energy while I was dancing, you know, doing like a swirling field move with my arms, I noticed that sometimes what would happen is that literally the people dancing next to me would be caught in the vortex of the spinning field of my energy and spin in the direction that I was releasing this field. And I realized, holy crap, like, and you know, this is a long time before Avatar: The Last Airbender, but back in those days, this was my impression was I was literally moving the elemental field around me, and I'd noticed that it moved like different elements. And as I moved this elemental field, I was literally seeing a direct reaction in the people around me, in the space around me. And literally things would amplify to a point where, and this was not just at the parties, what would happen is I would begin to be seeing all the patterns in this energetic field, and I would not come down. Like at the end of the night, you know, people after a party, they're crashing, everybody's tired, everybody's got hangovers because they've drank alcohol and all these different things and had these drugs. I'm like, no, I want to drive home. Like, I'll drive us back from Atlanta. I don't go to sleep. I'm like meditating all day, noticing and playing with my energy body. And I stay so heightened, I go back to school, and now I'm walking around high school building energy balls in my hands and showing my friends and letting them feel the different elements, the different fields, and experimenting with people. And I mean, at this time, I was living in Western North Carolina in a little town called Cullowhee, and I went to Smoky Mountain High School. And I can tell you, man, back in those woods, like, there's not many people that get this kind of stuff, right?
I know exactly how you feel, man. I'm from a town like that, and I am still in a town like that. And we've got to take a break, and I want to pick up this story.
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll leave it off where you realize where you're showing the energy balls. That's fascinating stuff and relatable to a lot of what we've talked about here on the show. Adam Apollo is our guest tonight. The website is adamapollo.com. Call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. Call in, hang out in the chat. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? Cannasense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. Cannasense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you? I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right. Adam Apollo's our guest tonight. We are talking about his story as he came into enlightenment before we get into the big stuff. And when I say big stuff, I mean you need to go to the website, adamapollo.com, look at the Superluminal Systems, Unify, Visionary Arts Foundation, the Enlightened Structure. Man, this is some really cool stuff, and I don't think one interview could encompass everything I would like to talk to you about, but Your story to me is good. Like the first time I ever talked to you, that's kind of what I want to hear. And we kind of left off with, how you were coming through this awakening, and you started to realize this field was around you, and you started using it, and others started recognizing that you could use it. And you were talking about energy balls, and I'll just let you take it from there, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to continue. It was a very raw time of exploration for me. And I fortunately had a couple close friends that we, could really go deep on this stuff together and explore it together. One of them, he and I used to do things like blindfolded martial arts, where we'd keep blindfolded and we do martial arts with each other and do from push hands to sparring, and see if we could speed up and go faster and faster and faster, just feeling where each other were going to move and seeing if our bodies could actually sense it and react to where a strike was before it was actually coming. And it was really powerful validation for both of us that this is the key, the key as in QI, literally, to martial arts and to a lot of ancient traditions and mastery practices across the board. I mean, you name it. You've got indigenous elders, Native American elders speaking about Great Spirit and communication with Great Spirit to be able to do a ceremony to call the rain or to do something like that. You've got Celtic traditions talking about the weave. In other words, the elements of the field being woven together, using different objects to symbolize your interaction with the universe in a way, and then calling the rain using that, or make greater fertility in the land by having open, very dynamic sexual ritual as a collective. It's called Beltane. It's an ancient tradition. You've got Vedic traditions talking about the wheels of this vibrational field inside the body, and they're known as the chakras. And there's different techniques of breath work to move that energy through the body. You have ancient Taoist traditions, which became Chinese medicine, talking about the meridians in the body and these different points on the body that are vibrational nodes and vortices that can, enhance health. You have the background in, ancient martial arts traditions from Shaolin Kung Fu, where people are creating an iron shirt or, golden belly and stopping a blade from piercing their skin, to samurai traditions and some of the highest arts of Japanese swordsmanship. You've got Maori traditions where, they're calling in the energies of the different elements into their bodies to become powerful warriors, and that's ancient Polynesian. You've got Balinese people talking about how we relate to spirits and how we relate with all the different layers of the spirit world through getting in touch with the fundamental field, which the temples are aggregators of. I mean, literally everywhere on the planet. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter which ancient tradition you study. You find that in all lineage traditions, there are simply different definitions for this fundamental field. And eventually I found that, of course, that fundamental field was also laced inside of Western philosophical tradition and the basis of physics as we know it. We called it the ether in, Greek and Roman traditions. And the ether, the study of the ether actually led to our study of fire, which became the study of thermodynamics, the study of air, which would become aerodynamics, and the study of earth, which is geology or geodynamics, the study of water or hydrodynamics. We've just named off the elements in different ways to create scientific studies and approaches for exploring the properties of space-time in these different ways. But the ether was actually there all the way up until the time of Einstein. And, supposedly these guys, Michelson and Morley, proved that the ether didn't exist. But their experiment is so ridiculous. It's just funny to even talk about. Like they had a tabletop laser system, and they were trying to measure if they could detect the pressure of the ether of the Earth moving through space, as if the Earth traveling through space we should somehow be pressing against this etheric field that the Earth is traveling through, and that you would be able to detect it on a tabletop. And of course they didn't. But, they never actually thought of the idea, oh, wait, maybe the ether, maybe the field is actually moving with the surface of the Earth. Maybe it's actually the field and space around the Earth that is actually moving with the Earth, and that the Earth is just part of that space that is moving. And when I was in high school, I dove deep into theoretical physics because I wanted to understand, why is this stuff missing from our science? And I started to uncover the fact that it actually was a huge part of our science, but that somewhere around the turn of the 1900s, it got completely lost. And part of it was Einstein's fault, because he studied light, and in special relativity, he described how light interacts with light. And they thought, okay, well, we don't need this luminiferous ether. We don't need ether to describe light anymore. But then Einstein's next paper is general relativity. And in general relativity, he describes space-time as this tangible fabric that bends and folds. And as it bends around a star, guess what? Light travels with it. And his teacher, Lorentz, said to Einstein, he says, Einstein, you just proved the ether exists. And Einstein's like, oh, you're right, I did. And so Einstein does this paper on the ether and says you cannot have the mechanics of general relativity without an ether. And you can look this up online. It's called Einstein and the Ether, and you can just search Einstein and the Ether. You'll find his paper. It's still there, published in a university journal. You'll probably find some of my writings about this as well. And nobody knows this. This is completely missing from our science. But Einstein literally proved that we have this field around us. And yet ask anybody going through a college-level physics course, any high school science, college science, none of them will ever mention this. It's just completely ignored. And it's really fascinating to me because as I've studied physics from loop quantum gravity to relativity to quantum mechanics to, string theory, as I've developed those studies over the years and especially into college, I began to realize that the one thing missing, literally the bridge that was missing between gravity at large scales and quantum mechanics at the small scales, like all of the pieces of abstraction, the pieces they couldn't figure out, the pieces that were really big problems in physics, and mainstream physics is full of huge issues right now, all come down to missing this fundamental field. It's missing this basic awareness that there is a super fluid, highly super strong vibrating fabric of space-time that's highly energetic, but it's in so much tensegrity, as Buckminster Fuller would put it, that it appears as if it's empty. It appears as if there's no energy there at all, because it's so well balanced. But of course, all the matter and all the mass and the spin of the Earth and the spin of every proton and the spin of the solar system and the spin of the galaxy, like there is massive amounts of energy moving without anything powering it. And that is the huge torrential forces of space-time roaring all around us. And we know how powerful they are when we get down to the quantum scale, because otherwise, how could you take a single atom and when you split the nucleus of one atom, look at what happens. Look at the immense power of a nuclear bomb. If space-time was not full of energy, how would we have an effect like that? Exactly. And it's just like there's this sitting right in front of all of us.
Yeah, I mean, a nuclear bomb, that is incredible, right? Like something that small could just annihilate New York City, Manhattan, and more, maybe upstate New York, and then send out radiation to everybody else. We are missing something for sure, I believe. And a lot of times, and I know you're a scientist, and I hope this doesn't offend when I say this, but I feel like sometimes science gets I feel like they're just trying to explain the least of things sometimes. And I'm not saying we haven't like made a big leaps in science, but we have. But I just don't think we're going it down the right way now. I think we're trying to figure out things that aren't really good for humanity, if you ask me.
You know, I completely relate with what you're saying. And a lot of that is the problem of the way the academic system funds people and specialization. Because if you want to be a tenured professor, you want to be funded, you're going to have to specialize into something that nobody else is talking about, right? And so you have to get more and more and more specific and dialed down into one little thing. And the problem is that by the time you get through a college level degree program, you've already kind of gotten indoctrinated into the way of thinking that's generally accepted by everybody else. So now you're thinking the same way as everybody else. Okay, great. Good job. Now you're in the boat, right? And then you've got to think of new things inside of the context of the way that everybody else is thinking. And that's just fundamentally really hard. Like, it's really pretty difficult to like constantly innovate when the way that is being thought of is the same way over and over and over again. And it gets really scary for older professors because they get to an age where they've got tenure and like they only know what they have developed theories around. Mm-hmm. And to accept a new young person's theory, or, you know, some person who's also talking about UFOs, or some person who's, you know, fringe or whatever, to accept those new theories when those theories actually fundamentally challenge what you've been teaching all your students for 30 years. Oof, that's tough. And not only that, but if you do accept it and you did try to go along those lines, you might lose your job. You might lose your position as a professor. Take the example of dark matter, for example. One of your people in the chat just asked, you know, could the ether be what the lamestream science calls dark matter? Absolutely, because if you simply account for space moving around the galactic disk, if you account for the fact that space-time has latent energy in it, which is what we measure, and the whole vacuum catastrophe of the mid-1900s happened because we measured massive amounts of energy in empty space, and we're like, how's that possible? Let's get that out of our science. Or like, we can't include that in our equations because they all break, you know. So they took out all that energy. But if you recognize that space-time is already highly energetic, and instead of looking at it like stars in a galaxy are moving through empty space, instead you calculate it as if all the space is moving and the stars are like little vortices in this moving field of space. So the whole galaxy is a whirlpool, including the space around it. Suddenly, the equations come out perfectly. You don't need dark matter and you don't need dark energy. Because it's not that there's like all this stuff that's suddenly missing or is invisible. It's that space itself is the stuff, and it's got a lot of mass energy. It has a huge amount of potential inside of it, especially when it's moving, as you know, as Einstein himself told us.
That's interesting. Yeah, because we've also had Walt Thornhill on here who talks about the electric universe. What do you think about that? Their idea of plasma, that it's a plasma field and everything's run on this electric grid. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, maybe not the specific thing that you're talking about, but I generally look at space-time as a highly energetic superfluid that happens to be crystallized, and the structure of the space-time crystal, interestingly enough, actually, you know, here's a real simple way for your audience, and this kind of backs up, you know, somebody was mentioning Terrence Howard at the Emmys talking about the flower of life pattern, which was awesome, by the way. I've never seen maybe except for Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's also just like, he's just going for it. He's like, the truth matters more than what people think about me. And he's just going for it. So, you know, here's the most simple thing, right? Like, if you have energy and it's vibrating a bunch, right? Like you take some little vibrating balls or a vibrating plate and you put little metal balls on it. What happens is everything tries to get into triangles, right? Because triangles are the most balanced form. If you try to build a structure, you take two sticks and you stand them up and they fall over, but you take a third stick and they stay stable, right? So everything's trying to make triangles in order to stabilize. The laws of thermodynamics, as far as we know of them, tell us everything's always trying to reach the state of least energy. It's always trying to reach equilibrium, right? Energy will radiate out if it's got extra, it's spreading itself out. And yet, it's such a simple thing, but yeah, of course things are going to form triangles naturally when they're left to their own means. Like you put a bunch of balls in a ball pit and yeah, they'll generally triangulate when you shake them down. And it's even more true of anything vibrating. And so what's the geometry of space that makes the most sense? Well, it's a triangulated lattice. And a triangulated lattice is, guess what? The flower of life pattern. That symbol on the Egyptian wall in Abydos, which is amazing, by the way, and is definitely not red ochre. And I've spent some considerable time in Egypt in multiple locations and studied the pyramids and the Serapeum and many other places. And I can tell you the technology used to build the Great Pyramid and many of these structures is absolutely way beyond what we think, basically way beyond even the technology we have right now. There's a place called the Serapeum. It's 150 feet, underground in like bored limestone tunnels. In one of the halls, there's about 30 chambers. And in each one of these chambers, there's a massive so-called sarcophagus. And the sarcophaguses are like, 8 feet wide by about 16 feet long by like about 7 feet tall. When you stand next to them, you're about as tall as these giant pieces of stone. The lids are 1.5 feet thick. I mean, if you guys can't visualize that, it's like we're talking huge. And they're made of single solid pieces of basalt. Now, if any of you guys are construction workers out there, you know that like there's a type of basalt that's over 9 on the hardness scale. It's like 9.5. It's literally almost as hard as diamond, and that's what this is made of. And they're single pieces. They weigh over 100 tons each, and they came from a mine over 50 miles away. And they are literally laser sharp. You can take a laser and you can shut it along the edge and it is perfect. Like it is perfect. There was no chiseling. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You could not chisel this thing into place. And, it's just absolutely fantastic. And they also all vibrate if you put sound inside of them, and a lot of them are open. They all have the same exact resonant frequency, and it's actually the same resonant frequency as inside the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. And these things are literally tuned like an instrument, but they're 100-ton pieces of stone, And and Markham 1963 on your chat, he's like, yeah, they maintain that these sarcophagi were built with copper tools. Yeah, right. The Great Pyramid is, a 1/4 mile square, and it's accurate to like less than half a centimeter off across the entire distance.
Yeah, it's really square.
Millions of stones. It's millions of stones. And these things were built with a level of precision and a knowledge of the structure of space-time and how it works and how gravity works. And also, I believe, after having visited Peru and seen similar things, and giant stones actually molded together that are like 100-ton stones, and they're like squished together as if they were soft pieces of clay, that they had a way to actually vibrate granite into, semi-softened states, and could float it and vibrate it and put it right where they wanted and leave it right there. And
we had a guest on last night, James Ernest Brown, who wrote a couple of books about, he believes that the Egyptian pyramids were designed as ancient water pumps, but water pumps that were designed for a specific type of electricity that we don't understand. Like, they used natural earth electricity, but also used it for other means. And then he went and talked about the electric Egyptians and how they used it in their bodies, kind of like chi, and was showing us, talking about these images and talking about the technology that they used when it comes to this. And eventually we got into alchemy and energetic transformation into star travel and stuff. And he believed that they knew these things and that pyramid was perfectly designed for that, to turn that water into some type of electric water. That was pretty interesting.
I think he's absolutely right, because there's also these tunnel systems running under the pyramid connected to well systems. We have not, if anybody has explored the extent of some of these tunnels, it's definitely not published and it's definitely not public, because how it's possible for some of these tunnel systems to run the way they do is just beyond our knowledge of current technology. And, I believe that, based on my research and my work in Egypt, that that there was actually tunnel systems connecting all the way from Saqqara all the way to Giza, and the Serapeum happens to be right in between. When you're at the Serapeum, these resonance chambers, these capacitors, as Markham has aptly said, and these grids of these capacitors, like I was just talking about, one of the halls has like 30s of these. There's actually multiple halls like this, and we don't know how many they are. We randomly found a few extras, but somehow these things are all tunneled underground, under the desert. And you get them out of the ground, and you look, and one direction is exactly where the pyramids of Saqqara is, and you look in the other direction, and it's a straight line to Giza. And so it's literally right on the line between the two pyramid complexes. Now, why would they build this giant thing under the ground? And what makes the most sense is that they were electrical energetic storage systems. So, and I believe that because of the ways they design these pipelines and the way the stone is set and the way the resonance works, is that if there was heavy pressure of water traveling through these things, and water that could also have, for example, other things mixed into it that electrically charge that water, that you would literally, because of the pressure of water, it would everything would be humming, and the vibrational hum from the water pressure would cause the resonant frequency of all of these objects to go off. And then you have what's basically like a self-reinforcing electrical charging system. And so they were literally piezoelectrically charging, all of this water in these networks, and then leveraging the use of that energy probably on the surface for growth, for running different objects. And there's all kinds of things that could have come out of that. And it's most likely technology all developed well before, what we consider the height of Egypt, the pharaohs. This is all stuff that from my assessment and from Robert Schoch's work and some of my other friends in this field, it's definitely pre-cataclysmic. It's prior to the end of the last ice age. This is stuff that points to a global interconnected civilization that we call Atlantis, which loops us right back to the beginning of our entire whole interview here.
Yeah, right. That's where I was thinking. I was like, yeah, this thing did just circle around pretty well. And you know what? I want to get into some of Adam's projects and some of the stuff that he's got planned in his visionary projects as well. AdamApollo.com is the website. He's our guest tonight. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Get the Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health. Naturally. Again, log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. And feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at GetTheTea.com.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM. And visit the website, thefringe.fm, to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Alex X. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to GetTheTea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
The night is young, so turn up the heat with your host, Joe Root, on Lighting the Void on The Fringe FM.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of The Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to The Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us at the midnight hour Central Time, I don't think anybody does Central except for me, but yeah, midnight hour Central Time, 10 o'clock Pacific now. Welcome to the show. We're live on the Fringe FM, KTLK, digital broadcasting 5 nights a week. We're here tonight. Our guest is Adam Apollo. The website is adamapollo.com. And tomorrow night on the program, we're going to have Marcus Allen on. We're going to be discussing all of the alleged Apollo moon landing, so that kind of fits with Adam Apollo, I guess. But that's what we're going to be talking about. But tonight, with Adam, we're talking about a lot of interesting things. And, I want to get to people, before we jump back into our conversation of science and history and where we need to go as far as unified consciousness goes, I want to get into some of the stuff that you do. And just real quick, I want to just talk about that, if you're cool with it. Sure. And like, for instance, your Visionary Arts Academy, you've got on your website, you've got educational projects, some of your companies and organizations, and then some of your own performances, which I think is cool. So you're blending art with your missions, and I think that's fantastic.
Thanks, man.
And you've got the Visionary Arts Academy, the Guardian Alliance, the Resonance Academy, and your knowledge database. And what do you see yourself as? Because I know we haven't talked about your experience, and we don't have to if you're not comfortable with it yet, but you've talked about the experience you had. You know what you're here to do, right? And so what is your mission here to do, man? Like, I feel like I have one too. I feel like I know a little bit about my past lives and what I'm here to do. But what is Adam here to do?
Well, just so that you don't feel like I'm trying to beat around a bush or something and not get to the really juicy stuff, I'll tell you straight up, I'm here to help build a bridge between humanity and the rest of the galactic community throughout the stars. And in order to do so, I am here as a guardian, helping to clear a lot of the programs and systems of conscious thought that are restricting the capacity of each individual to know their infinite eternal nature and unlimited power and grace. And through doing that, I help to turn on people's superpowers, enable their deepest gifts, and help them to discover and know the truth for themselves. And that being, a process of education, of learning, of self-development, self-mastery, I find is really the one fundamental step that's needed, because if we're all giving our gifts and doing our sacred work, as you might call it, or fulfilling our purpose, as you might say, then we're going to see the world that is going to benefit the generations to come. And our children will have a beautiful world to grow up in. But as long as we are hiding, and as long as we are keeping our heads under rocks and not willing to face the truth and not willing to stand up for what we believe in, then, we're going to keep seeing business as usual, and we're going to keep literally feeling the breakdown of the systemic structures that we're holding on to because we believe that they keep us safe, that they keep things normal, that they keep things okay. When you started this show, there was a lot of what you were saying that I was really resonating with around facing the shadow. And, I'll be straight with you, Joe. Like, the truth is, man, in order to really do the work of becoming a master of yourself, to develop the capacity of yourself to give your greatest gift, it requires that you face your shadow. If you can't face your darkness, then you can't see the light. Yeah. And the thing is that there's a lot of darkness, and that, going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, the lies of the collective, we all have our own lies that we've been telling ourselves, and the lies in the collective are really strong. A lot of people have made agreements about the way that they think things are, and they hold on to that because they believe that somehow if it just stays that way, they're going to be okay, they're going to be safe, and if that changes, then what's going to happen to them? I mean, in some cases, they're afraid they're going to die, they're going to lose their lives. And all of that, that fear is really based on trauma. And usually it was the trauma at some point in our lives of stepping out, trying to do something totally different, totally weird, doing something totally unlike the rest of the crew when we were in middle school or high school, and being shunned for it, rejected for it. And pushed down. And we just thought, oh man, I'm not going to do that again. I don't want to go against the grain like that, because then, I'll forever be this outcast, because we want to be part of something. We want to be connected to each other.
I want to tell you something, man. I'm going to use what you're saying for promos and hits for the show. Like you're what you're saying is the whole reason why I've never been able to word it like that. But it's the whole reason why I'm doing Lighting the Void, is because when I started doing this, even before this, what I noticed as my paradigm started shifting and as I just begun my journey into shadow work, is that people were incredibly talented and gifted. Everybody that, people talk about, well, if you got the right talent, well, everybody I knew had some sort of gift or talent or something to offer the world that was extraordinary. And yet, it was encaged. It was caged up by fear and by programs, and it gets really hard when you start seeing that a lot.
The ultimate cage, as Morpheus so aptly put it, is our mind. Our mind is the cage, and it's literally just the collective compounding of impressions that we've taken on from trauma through our life and into our past lives. As I discovered when I was in college, and I, had there was a girl that, was the roommate of my girlfriend, and I'm sitting in her dorm room at one point having a cup of coffee and talking to these two guys, and she's talking to two girls while she's sitting on her bed. And I look over at her and she glances at me, and all of a sudden I'm in a medieval dorm room.
Oh man.
I mean, I'm in a medieval ballroom. Not in a college dorm room anymore. I'm in a medieval ballroom. I can smell the oil lamps burning on the walls. I can feel the dust in the air, the tapestries, the heavy old tapestries hanging on the walls. She's in this elaborate dress, and her hair is up and bound back. She's speaking and giggling with these other high ladies. I'm wearing ornamental armor. I can feel the weight of it and the leather straps underneath, kind of like, digging into my shoulders, the weight of the sword at my hip, the feeling of the cloak over my shoulder. And I'm talking with these two lords about protecting our grain trade through this particular valley where we keep having these brigands that are coming in and raiding and ambushing our grain carts. And we're strategizing about, how we're going to set up and scout ahead to stop this from happening. But as I'm having this conversation with them, I'm looking at her and knowing that she's the love of my life, and I'm having all these feelings of love, and I'm talking to them, and it's just I'm just used to it, talking about how to protect this or that or set up something this way. So where I'm really at is in this feeling with her and just this immense love. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm back in a college dorm room, and I was saying something, but I'm looking at my two buddies that are sitting there, and they're looking at me, and they have this crinkle on their eyebrows, and they're looking at me like, are you, and one of them says, dude, are you okay?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta get some water. And I get up, I go out into the hallway, and they have a water fountain out in the hallway in this dorm, so I go out, drink from the water fountain. I'm like, what was that? And I go back into the room, and this is again my girlfriend's dorm room, and this was her roommate. And I look in the bathroom, and she's in the bathroom, just as you come in the dorm, they have the shared bathroom between two dorm rooms, and she's in there, she's washing her face off, and she looks up at me with these big eyes, and she says and kind of mouths to me, did you? And I'm like, oh my God, you did too? And she nods at me, and I was just like, whoa. And that was my first experience of a past life recall with someone. And it was so visceral, and the emotions, the feelings, the energetics of it, like it was intense, right? But even with that and a series of things that happened after that, it wasn't until I was at this Halloween party, and we're coming up on Halloween, so it's an appropriate story. And we go out to this Halloween party, and this guy comes and joins our little crew, and his name is John. And I didn't know him. The girl that I just had this past life experience with, she didn't know him. He was like kind of interested in or dating one of her friends. And she and I had been like closed mouth secret about this because I'm still dating her roommate. And like, we couldn't even talk about it. Right. But we're like sharing dreams. We're like having these moments, and we're just like, I don't know what to do here because we have all this something, but what do you do? Like, how do you deal with that? And we didn't know. And so we just didn't tell anybody. And we're at this Halloween party, and the next thing I know, this guy, he is super drunk, and he's coming over to talk to us, and he's like blabbing on this and that. And then he starts looking at me, and he starts crying. Whoa. And he starts apologizing to me for all this shit that he did to me in the Middle Ages.
Really?
And he's like, I took her on my ship, and like, I knew she was yours, but I didn't care. And I got her drunk. I seduced her, and I felt so bad about it, but I hated you, and I didn't care. You had everything. And he's like saying all this stuff to me, and he starts calling me by my name from that lifetime. And I'd had a hint of the name that I had in that lifetime because I had a dream about it. And she had a dream also in which she remembered her name from that lifetime. And he starts calling her by that name too, and apologizing to her and bawling. And as he's saying all of this stuff, and this was all trauma. It was pain and trauma held between us in the field, and I could feel it all. I mean, part of me just wanted to kill him right then, but a part of me had already forgiven him. And I could it was just so much pain. My insides were just screaming, and I just was breathing and just letting it through. And like, okay, like, I'm just supposed to forgive him right now. That's all that's supposed to happen. And as he's telling me, I'm remembering it, and remembering literally battling him to the death in my courtyard, like literally fighting to the death in order to stop him from like attacking these villages around my castle and laying siege to my castle. I was like, no, it's you and me. We're going to fight to the death in my courtyard. And we did. And we literally killed each other. And, I remember exactly the technique I used when I realized that it was not going to be good. And we fought for God knows how long. We were dripping sweat and in total pain, and every muscle in my body was aching. And I remember opening up just opening a gap just enough for him to strike me under my left rib by lifting my sword up above my head. And I let him slide the sword in, and then I just came down on his neck and sliced right through him and killed him instantly. But, of course he hit one of my organs, and the next thing I know, I'm on the paving stones, and I remember dying. And And it was such an interesting experience because like I remembered seeing, you know, her over my body, like crying and, you know, shaking me, and I'm looking at it and I'm not in my body. I'm in my spirit body, and everything's bright and full of light, even though it was like evening and night. And like, I had this very visceral experience of crossing to this other realm, and entering heaven, entering this spirit world. And a part of me remembered it, and I could bring that memory back into my life now. And the gift of dealing with the shadow of the pain with this person and the trauma with this person was that it unlocked inside of me a gift of self-awareness that was at a new level than I'd ever experienced before in my life.
And this just came, so what you're saying is these moments just happened. Like they would just phase in. You would get no warning from them or anything. It would just, did you have an emotion? Yeah. Did you have a thought? Was there any trigger that you think that happened before these things would happen or begin?
Yeah, well, some of them were just really sudden like that. But over time, you know, in the aggregate of, you know, many, many hundreds, probably 1,000 experiences that I've had over 20, 25 years like this, there are many times when I recognized there was a trigger in advance, but I didn't catch it, right? And the trigger usually is something like you meet somebody and there's just suddenly you feel something and there's a familiarity, and it's like, and it might be really positive, it might be really negative. And it's either like there's certain people you just meet and you just completely don't trust them, like instantly. You don't know why. It's just like, I don't know about that guy.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And you know what happens is that most people write it off. They just are like, I don't trust that guy. I don't know why, but I don't care. Or whoa, I really feel like I know this person. Like, it's so strange. It feels like I've known you before. But then you're just like, no, that's just weird. Right? Like we put it in a container of our mind that says, that's weird. I don't understand that. Probably never will. Oh, well. But when you train your mind to be in an active state of inquiry, which is what I had done the years before that, through high school and all the way up into college, I was training myself to pay attention to every little thing. Like, what is this? What does this mean? Why am I having this feeling right now? And I think I trained my mind well enough so that when that charge was there and that experience was there, suddenly it would open a window for me to have an experience. And all it took was having just kind of one of these really powerful experiences with this woman in college, and then this guy seeing us from a third party, which like totally solved the problem for my scientific mind, because I was like, maybe I'm just fantasizing with this chick, you know. Like, or as Craven is saying in your chat, you know, when it's one way, it's really tough, right? But when you get some kind of validation that it's there, suddenly it gives your mind the capacity to relax and actually just explore it a little bit more. And I remember doing this with one of my other friends in college. You know, it was probably 6 months or a year later, and we're hanging out, and I just had this feeling like I definitely knew that I knew her. Yeah. And I just had this feeling that we had done archery before. Like, and I was like, we're just sitting and talking, and she's just a friend. And I was like, I just have this feeling that I've shot a bow and arrow with you. Does that sound familiar to you? And she looks at me and her eyes get wide and she's like, oh my God, yes. Like we've totally done that. And I realized, wow, you know, all it takes is being brave enough just test the water. Like just try, like see if the thing that you're feeling and that you are relating with around the person, like, or if it's like from a certain time period, like you feel a strong Roman connection, or you feel a strong indigenous connection, or, you know,
Egyptian, that's a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, Egyptian, totally. Like, you know, ask them, like, talk about something like that. Do you feel a resonance with this period in Egypt? Like, have you ever been interested in, you know, the period around the time of Tutankhamun or whatever it happens to be, right? And just see what's there. And what I've found is, at this point, I've documented hundreds of shared memories that I have with people that I've met, because I've traveled a lot. I've been to a lot of places, met a lot of people, gone super deep with a lot of people, and I literally have been able to map most of my lifetime on Earth.
Here we have an audio glitch. All right, I got it fixed. So most of the people that you've met in your life, you feel like, I've just started experiencing this myself, so I'm trying to understand it, right? Because I recently had somebody come into my life, and sorry about the audio glitch, guys, but I've recently had somebody come into my life and say, you know, I feel kind of drawn to you. I know you, right? And what you're saying is making the hair stand up on my arms, because I'm thinking this is weird, right? And so now this person wasn't very, you know, I met them online, but they weren't very upfront about their identity, and I was like, okay, well, I'm willing to explore this, right? Because I've had weird stuff, and sometimes people do things that they're kind of weird to me, or get obsessive. I'm not going to lie. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. But this was different. Like I could feel it instantly. And then when I saw this person's face, I was like, okay, yeah, I've got this. This is somebody that I've seen before. I've even got that face in one of my dream journals where I've sketched it out, because I kept seeing these same characters or people, you know. And then we kind of explored that. Now, I think it's incredibly brave for anybody to come out and say that. And I admired that so much, that person, as scary as that is, would come out and say something like that, you know?
Yeah. It takes a lot of courage, and it can be challenging. And because we don't have any kind of training or context, nobody talks about this. There's nothing in school about it. There's no one that's teaching about it. Like, it's pretty tricky, and people can obsess about it too and not know what the freak is going on. You know, as Morphine Rose in your chat has shared, like, sometimes things turn into really bad situations where someone becomes a stalker because they have this sense, they know they knew somebody in a past life, but it's the first time they've had the experience. They don't know how to read it, so they think, oh my God, we are soulmates. We're meant to be together. This is supposed to happen. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, you don't necessarily run into people that you've been with in previous lives because you're meant to be with them now. You're drawn to them now because you might have something that's unresolved from that other time. And that means that you may have, you know, some karma to resolve. You may, you know, feel some debt to each other. There may be a lot of, you know, different things that could come up in that dynamic.
But you need to explore
right? Exactly. It does require some inquiry, and it requires some exploration. And it's a delicate thing, because that exploration is a very intimate thing to do, and it can be, you know, either lead to, you know, sexuality, or it can, you know, also lead to other things, very familial kind of ties. And unless you really go all the way in and through and kind of see it for what it is, it's difficult to understand it fully. And the draw that we may have with someone, especially if it's someone we've been a lover with multiple lifetimes, we had kids with, we've had like epic alchemy with them. And let's say you're in a partnership, you know, or you're in a committed monogamous relationship, and here comes this person that you've had this like super epic, deep sexual alchemy with in other lifetimes. That's a tough situation to be in,
I see what
because
you're saying.
There's something to, you know, there's a reason why they're showing up, but you're in this situation. You don't know how to deal with or resolve the fact that that energy is still there, and they are there for a reason, but coming to understand what that reason is when there's fear and when there's jealousy and when there's other things that start to cloud the field, can be very challenging. And so, one of the things that it's been a big part of my life, because I have so many deep, like, soul level connections with different people, is that, I had to eventually find out how I could be in a partnership or a relationship that was willing to actively explore the soul connections that we have with other people's in our lives, and be willing to adapt and shift and explore and see what's there and open up fields and find the truth and really get to the root of it without fear, without blocking each other, without fear of losing each other, without all of this other kind of funk in the way. And it's taken me a long time to get there. It's taken me a long time to get to a place where I could start actually feeling full safety in that. But I had that prior to, a 10-year marriage that I went into, or a 10-year relationship, 6-year marriage.
That's a lifestyle. And that's hard to, hard to move from. It has to be
so difficult, and really difficult when it's someone that you do have amazing connection with, you have amazing experiences with, who's brilliant, who's extremely talented. But it just happens that your particular, shadows and traumas and things that you've been working through or haven't faced yet, and theirs just happen to intersect just right to make it really excruciatingly hard. Wow. And so you grow a lot and you work a lot to make it better. But in my experience, I worked and so did she, and we couldn't ever get to a place where I had, in a resting state, like a feeling of like, oh yes, we are so there. This is so good. I am so happy in my life right now. Or she's like, I am so happy. We are so there. It was like a long-term training experience.
Yeah, but you grew from it though, right? I mean, like you did some hardcore, I would say, spiritual and alchemical work on yourself with that person. Right. It doesn't mean they have to be there your entire life. It's cool if that happens. That's what you hope for. But I'm kind of, man, that's crazy you're talking about that, because I'm kind of going through the same thing. Like, I've just got to a point in my life where I've realized that permanency, it's not real. Not on this plane. It's not real, and you have to be able to let things go. And you hope for the best. That's the way I look at it. But you have to be able to let things go and be able to move on, and try to work through this kind of stuff. And I think it's hard to do, especially, and when you've been through, like you said, like a 10-year marriage, and nobody knows. I mean, that's kind of your business, how healthy it was. But some people go through, they have these ideas of what marriage and life is supposed to be like, and they put those ideas into the wrong person, and then this person just totally annihilates them, right? Abuses them to the core, and now they're stuck in this place where they're just, you were talking about trauma, right? I've seen this so many times. I've seen it with my own mother, where they're just traumatized, and anybody that tries to come into their life and heal them is going to get it. I mean, they're going to get it. It's just hard for everybody. But the thing is, though, I believe, is a lot of really good spiritual progress happens if you're willing to try to work through that stuff,
That's right. And that's, that's kind of, finishing the weave on that circle is simply the awareness that, you have to be willing to face the stuff that you have with people from other times. And the beauty is that by facing the shadows you have and that they have, and you're willing to do the work, then you will move to the other side and you will gain a huge amount of insight and skill. One of the things that I love sharing with my students is this idea that, if you spent 30 years training in a specific type of sword play, or learning cooking, or practicing calligraphy, why start from scratch now? Why not simply develop the condition, open the space, create the moment for yourself to remember the skill that you've already developed? Because you've probably already had hints throughout your life that you were already really good at this thing, but maybe you never really dove into it, never really let yourself actually access the well of memory that's embedded inside of you around that skill. But once you do, suddenly it comes back to you, and it's your mastery level can be there instantly. And, you know, for me, I'm someone who likes to do a lot of things, and I've had a lot of lifetimes on this earth, and there's a lot of things that are interests to me, but I don't have time to spend, 10 years practicing all of them. So instead, I've generally, spent about a year or so in one or another practice just accessing really deeply my memories of using this particular tool. And one of those for me is a sword. So I've brought back my memories of using two-handed Celtic broadswords, katana, wakizashi, English longsword, different forms of short swords, Chinese longsword. And you just put one of these swords in my hand, and I will know. My body knows how to do it. My body just remembers. Viking longsword. I mean, you name it. I've had a lot of swords in a lot of different places, and it was something that really helped me anchor this concept that all we need to do is really take the tools that we've used previously, and these tools that we've already developed mastery in, or these skills that we've already developed mastery in, will help us to integrate whatever practices of mastery, learning, philosophy, knowledge, wisdom that we have developed in other times. And through my work in computers, design, and my exploration of engineering and physics, I also began to access, after this experience out in the desert, some of the engineering principles and concepts for how to actually build starships, how starship technologies work, how interplanetary and interstellar travel works, how telepathic routing works at a galactic scale, a lot of technologies and things that there is no reference for anywhere on this planet, but that I developed over my lifetimes, as a Syrian ambassador, and previously to that, a Pleiadian healer, and previous to that, Shiheli warrior, and so on and so forth. So
have you ever read the Book of Five Rings by Miyoto Musashi?
What's interesting is that he was a sword master of mine when my name was Tokugawa Tadanaga.
Man, that guy.
I was born in 1605, and he trained me in the Edo province. My older brother was Tokugawa Yatsu, and he's it's in Wikipedia, but it took me years to kind of deal with those memories and access them. And then I figured out the year I was born. I figured out my family common. And then I realized that my life was on Wikipedia, which is a really, really weird experience. But yes, I know the Book of Five Rings very, very well.
The greatest books I've ever read from a guy. I mean, when they talk about, oh man, we got to take a break too. When they talk about how many battles he's been into, how he trained, and he talks about every kind of situation in a sword fight, right?
Yes.
Close quarters, outside. If you're facing this many guys, people would challenge him, and he'd go to the challenge. And I'm thinking, man, what a crazy, insane kind of lifestyle where you're willing to be. Somebody's like, hey, it's not like when we went to school and the guy wants to meet you at recess, and you're like, okay, we're just going to just hit each other until somebody's done. I mean, they went up to each other and was like, somebody's going to die right now just because I think I'm better than you, And this guy won so many battles. And then when you read his book, his whole thing is, it's not just about the technique of the sword. He talks about that, but it's more about his mind and his movement. Right. His mind, his movement, and his environment, right?
Mm.
And the plot
integrity of energy.
Yeah, and he gets into some really hardcore philosophical stuff, and I've heard that a lot of people that run businesses and things like that are really competitive get this guy's book because they use some of his principles in battle, and it's a pretty epic book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's fascinating. So what I want to do, like, I've got to go into this break, but what I'd like to do is you were talking about past lives, and maybe we could talk about that a little more, because I would like to figure out, because I've heard enough people talk about it, and I've had my own kind of experiences with it. I would kind of like to explore that topic a little bit more, if you're up for it, and just see if we can look into this a little bit further. We're here with Adam Apollo. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Ready to open your mind? It's Lighting the Void with your host, Joe Roop.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves stripped bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
This is Stephen King, and you are listening to The Fringe. The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheTea.com.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your Super Strength Cleansing Tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for Super Strength Tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you're interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
All right, so we're back with Adam Apollo, and I want to say thank you guys for coming out and listening to the show tonight. Don't forget, this weekend, if you're in the South, come hang out with us at the Arkansas Paranormal Expo, October the 5th and the 6th. I don't know how long we'll be there on the 6th, but I know for sure we'll be there on the 5th. And come hang out with us. We'll be broadcasting and getting on the air and stuff. So, yeah, Adam, so before the break, you were talking about your past life as a swordsman. And you've had many past lives. Maybe with a sword, who knows, right? Like, what I want to figure out though is how do we access these things? And I don't mean a set formula, but what keeps us from being able to explore our past lives the way that you know about yours? What do you think the biggest thing is?
Honestly, I think it's the same thing that keeps most people from exploring any of this really juicy, epic stuff, which is simply belief systems. You know, we establish a belief system, and it's like a crystallization of our mind. It's like, okay, this is what is real. This is what's possible. This is what's real. And then what we do is we start building things on top of that. You know, we have this foundation of safety, and we build things on top of it. And we create all these constructs, and all these constructs of thinking and the ways that we react to things are built on these foundations of a belief system. And so the more stuff that gets stacked on there, the scarier it is to pull out the belief system underneath, right? So we start defending it and protecting it as if it's our life, as if it's our ego, right? As if like we're going to die if we let go of that belief in some way. And, this goes across the board to tons and tons of concepts that I could discuss at length, with you guys. But, one example that's really a super fascinating one for me and is of deep interest to me as a physicist is people's perception of the pentagram. Because the pentagram is literally the geometry. A pentagonal structure is actually in space-time. If you have a triangulated lattice and space-time is in equilibrium, the only way for you to have curvature, in other words, the only way you can have gravity where space-time curves, is to have a pentagonal intersection in that triangulated lattice. We see this when we go into a dome. If you've ever been into a dome, you'll see that if you look up at the triangles on the ceiling, it's all sixes, and then there's these 5 spots in the kind of upper hemisphere, Tropic of Cancer, so to speak, where there's these 5 pointed intersections, and then there's one on the top. Now, if it was a whole sphere, you'd be seeing that there is actually 12 all the way around, and that's what Bucky called the vector equilibrium. If you follow those all the way in, you get to basically a stellated dodecahedron, or an adjusted dodecahedron that has points, and then that collapses to an icosahedron. For those of you into Platonic solids and geometry like that. So, but literally, we have to understand that the pentagram is actually a geometry that nests inside of it something known as the golden mean ratio. And the golden mean ratio, or golden spiral, it's sometimes called, or sometimes we just say phi ratio, even though phi just represents any ratio in physics. It's the kind of classically known phi. And this ratio is literally, it's embedded in the Fibonacci sequence, which is how plant leaves grow on plants. It's literally the structured spiral for how many, many kinds of flowers grow. Nautilus shells grow, and this means the human body is built in phi ratio proportions, from the tip of your finger to the first pieced knuckle to the second knuckle, up on your hand to your wrist to your elbow. All of that is approximating this golden mean ratio. The DNA in your body, from the length of one turn of the DNA to the width, is around 1.618, blah, 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 which is basically the golden mean ratio. The galaxies, when we see spiral galaxies in space, they're approximating the golden mean spiral. Like, it's literally a geometry that is woven throughout of all space-time, and it's literally the geometry that gives rise to life, and it's the geometry in quantum gravity that gives rise to gravitation itself. It's so fundamental to everything. And yet there's belief systems out there that pentagrams are evil. Now, I want you to just think about that for a second. Your DNA is made of it. Your body's made of it. Your connection to the gravitational field of the planet is made of it. And yet, if you in your mind believe that is evil, how do you think that's going to affect your body and your health? How do you think that's going to affect your DNA? How do you think it's going to affect your relationship to the earth? Now, what's really fascinating is that the reason that the geometry is considered evil is because ancient traditions across Europe in particular, and also in other places in the world, not just Europe, but in particular across Europe, there was all these different traditions that treated the pentagram as this sacred symbol representing a connection to the 4 elements of nature, the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, and the 5th element, which is consciousness and or spirit or ether that transcends them. And it's a way, and it was used in literally what we describe as magic, but in ritual and prayer and ceremony to communicate with space-time or with God God, goddess, animals, plants, energies, call the rain, do all of these things. And when the Roman Empire was traveling across Europe, one of their kind of classical tactics was take the sacred symbolism or take whatever's really important or valuable to the peoples that they were traveling to and make whatever it is that they believe in bad. And as long as that's bad and evil and we replace it with a new system, then it kind of forces people out of their power center and they have to adapt to a different system. And this happened with our calendar. This happened with our belief, like many of the kind of important dates throughout the year. For example, Easter, which is believed to be a Christian holiday, actually comes from Ostara, which is an ancient pagan Celtic holiday. Halloween is actually Samhain, which is a holiday that, you know, celebrates and honors the spirits that have crossed to the other side. Yeah. Christmas is connected to solstice, which is, you know, or Albanathurin, which is the celebration of like the ending of the night cycle, where the daylight begins to return, where the sun stands still for 5 days and there is a resurrection. You know, like all of these things have embedded inside of them these ancient pagan traditions, which then were made evil through Christianity and the Roman Empire. And so what's fascinating is that those old traditions and rituals were what actually connected us to the cycles of the earth, is actually what connected us to the magic of how consciousness interacts with space-time, and literally, you know, like connects us through this pentagonal geometry to gravity, to mass, to being grounded, and to feeling and actually having health and healthy relationship with ourselves. And now look at our society. Look at the planetary society. Look how out of sync so much of Western sort of, and I hate to say this because a lot of, you know, I have plenty of Christian friends. I've had Christian upbringing in my life too, been plenty of Christian churches, and, you know, I love Christ. I love the teachings of Jesus, but I'll just say we got to own the shadow that Christianity basically, you know, said that the very geometry that connects us to the earth itself was evil. And not only that, but they made the symbol of devil, which is actually the being who's supposedly this powerful dark being that's going to take you to hell and torture you forever if you sin, especially if you do stuff like sex that's inappropriate, right? Well, guess who the devil actually is? It's actually in ancient Greek tradition, it's Pan. And in Celtic tradition, it's Cernunnos. And guess what that god is responsible for? Connection with nature, with the animals, and with sex, and with fertility. Literally the health of the land, the fertility of the land, the fertility of a people was connected to this representation, which was made evil and connected to this idea of the devil. Now, if you're not willing to look at all of that, then you're not really willing to look at the shadow, and you're not willing to look at the fact that, you know, that there were literally, you know, there have been hundreds of thousands of women slaughtered because they were herbalists across Europe. And there's a reconciliation that is needed around that, and a healing that is needed around that, a forgiveness that's needed around that, in the same way that there needs to be reconciliation with the indigenous peoples of North America and the Native Americans who have been here for a long time. And a lot of their culture, a lot of their ways was made, you know, bad, and they were shoved into little corners and deserty ghettos with poor land and poor water, you know, that we call reservations. And we still in America think that it's like okay that that's happened, when in reality, from any other perspective, a reservation is a concentration camp. And we need to face these things, because the wisdom of the peoples that are literally our own ancestry, our own traditions, our own past, is carrying inside of it this medicine that we need to eat. We need to take that medicine. We need to face who we are, and we need to acknowledge the shit that our ancestors have done, and we need to forgive, and we need to come back into the hoop. We need to come back together and honor each other. And that also means starting to look at the things that we've believed with our belief systems are evil or bad or dark, and we just take it for granted as if that's just the way it is because we're scared, and actually look at what it really means. You know, what are these things really about? And when we begin to do that, man, our lives change a lot, and we start to really see that things are a lot more connected than we thought. And a lot of our old traditions, a lot of our ways are more connected than we thought. And that there's a deeper connection between all of the lines of all the peoples on this earth.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree, man. I think that exploring that kind of stuff is difficult because it does make us look to ourselves, you know. And a lot of times we want to put ourselves above others too, you know, because it's easy from the outside looking in to say, oh, this is what's wrong with you, and you do this, and you do this, and you do that, and then I'm this person to you, and I'm that person, right? And then we try to relate to others, even strangers, you know?
Yeah.
And we just don't sit in our truth like you were talking about, you know, sit in your truth and just kind of feel it out.
Yeah.
And I think daily meditation helps with that. And I talk about meditation so much, man, but I don't do it enough. It's very hypocritical for me to talk about it as much as I talk about it, but I don't do it enough because I get lazy with it. But when I do decide to do it, it turns into like I'm paradigm shifting stuff, you know. And if that's the case, we should definitely be doing that every day. Definitely be doing that every day. You know, I mean, if it's changing your paradigms just in a few sessions, then there's something to it.
Well, and you know, I think that one of the issues is that in modern life, a practice where the only meditation that we do is requiring us to go and sit in a quiet place where like we're not going to be disturbed and, you know, go inward like that, is unrealistic for a lot of people. It's just is because of the way that life is these days and the dynamics of life or having kids or whatever it is that you've got going on in your life, housemates, city, traffic, whatever it is. And the reality is that there are actually many different kinds of meditation. And most people don't even realize that there are many ways to train the mind. The mind can be trained through movement. The mind can be trained through reading. The mind can be trained through doing art and drawing. You can actually turn almost any art form into a really powerful practice of meditation. And for many people, that's way more appealing than just sitting still, you know, trying to put your legs in lotus posture and just breathing and just trying to stop thinking. Right. And the thing is, you know, everybody has perhaps a method of meditation that is most conducive to the development of skill and mastery of their own mind. For me, it's martial arts and swordplay. When I move and I do swordplay, my mind is still and pristine and everything is in focus, and I can feel every layer of my body. My breath is moving with my body, and my chi is moving with my breath, and everything just comes together and clicks. And I can process through frustration. I can process through different emotions. I can process all kinds of things and come into a deeper understanding of whatever's going on inside of me and in my life through this act of motion and through the act of applying my body in these ways. My ex-partner, my former partner and wife for many years, you know, she's a visionary artist and painter, and her practice in meditation was through her art and building headdresses and creating these amazing things. And I watch her, and she just go into these just Zen states for hours and hours and out of time, where she's just in this flow where she's creating. And she's streaming through these visions that are just absolutely phenomenal, like just unbelievably beautiful stuff. And, you know, I was like, wow, like that's not my method, but wow, what an amazing application of this inner capacity to this work. And I think that, you know, I think it's something that we all should work to find is like, what is this method? What is the craft that we have personally for doing this art of creation, and for finding stillness, and for finding where we're connected and how we're communicating to our lives and to space-time.
Well, what are your thoughts on alchemy? Because this is kind of like where I like to take the show in the last part of the show, and I might as well. Do you believe that it is an energetic conscious transformation, or do you kind of look at it as what Carl Jung talked about, where it's just coming into an awareness of your higher self? I've heard a lot of different things about this, and I've even heard people say there's such thing as star travel, and I've had some really insane experiences with that, actually, exploring that. And I'm very curious, since you've had some experiences with, I guess, intergalactic beings, what have they told you about this, or do you have any insights on that?
Well, there's a couple layers to your question. The first thing that I heard you ask is, what is alchemy? And the most clear definition I can offer of alchemy is understanding the fundamental harmonics of space-time, and understanding that different harmonic relationships exist which have creative, destructive, and neutralizing properties. So fire and water come together and they make air, and can also produce earth. And there is a dynamic to that. Air and earth have properties. These are elemental combinations. Likewise, when you bring together the vibration of red and the vibration of green, you have a certain kind of alchemy that's different from the vibration of red and yellow brought together. And when you study how different harmonic elements of energy in the universe interact with each other, you get to know what alchemy is really about. One of the most practical ways that we can learn and play with the force of alchemy in our lives and get to know it is through sexuality and through developing an understanding of masculine and feminine as a form of charge, and getting to know your masculine side and your feminine side, and how that masculine and feminine interacts with the masculine and feminine in somebody that you're relating with. There's a lot of really great work in this area already done. You know, David Data is an amazing author in this area. You can explore a lot of his work. He gets really deeply into understanding masculine and feminine alchemy, and especially in the primary masculine and primary feminine fields. And then there's a huge amount of additional, authors and other people out there that have done exquisite work in this area. And I've found that, in any case, it's important to get to know how different charges interact and how the field in you interacts with other fields, and how things change when your energy and your vibration changes. So if you're more fiery versus more watery in a certain situation, what's going to happen? And studying the kind of process of how you're vibrating and how you're influencing space is really key to developing a deeper understanding of magic. Now, alchemy comes from the word alchem, which is of the Chem, which is of Kemet or Egypt, of the Black Land. And this is because in ancient Egypt, alchemy was sort of fundamental to our understanding of consciousness, transformation, self-development, etc. Now, once you have some basis in that, it's not even required that you have a basis in that, but exploring things like the etheric realm and the astral realm become easier, and you get more proficient at those areas of consciousness as you develop skills in alchemy. Because the etheric is literally getting to know the field of the ether, or your interaction with the vibrational field around you in space-time. It's getting to know your chi, your ki, like your prana, how you're moving the field around you through what you're thinking and feeling and doing. Now, the astral is sort of the next layer up. So if you could describe it the most simply, you would say you're in a physical body, but you have an etheric or an emotional field around you where energy is moving, emotion, and that's your vibratory superfluid field, how you're interacting with space-time. And then you also have an astral field, and the astral field is like the mental consciousness lattice. As we were talking about, you know, a belief system is like a structure that you build things on. Well, it actually is a structure in your astral field. You've actually built a container for your mind, and it's radiating out around your body, and it's actually filtering the light and the vibrations that can come in and out of it through the space-time field. So when you've got a really strong astral construct that's aligned with a specific belief system, well, guess what? You're actually in a cage, and you're you're actually filtering the information that can reach you through that cage. Whereas when you've developed that astral field in a way that's highly permeable and able to be easily adaptable, like a child's mind, then new information can come in, and you can flex, and you can grow, and you can dance, and you can explore many, many more things. Now, what most people don't realize is that the practice of remote viewing, as probably you've had many people on the show talk about, probably some whistleblowers and things like that, is really just the art of astral travel. It's the art of getting to know that you can actually move your mind around without moving your body around. And when you learn how to move your mind around, you realize that you can travel with your perception. And your perception, when traveling as part of this kind of extension of your astral self, and sometimes your entire astral body. In other words, you're holding a form that could be whatever kind of form, but usually starts with being similar to your body form, because it's your mental imprint of your body, the same way as you have, you know, a body in a dream. Like you're in a dream, and you're in a dream world, and you're doing things, and your body's laying in bed, but in your dream you have a body. Well, that's, you know, roughly your astral body. Although, you know, dreams can be both deeply subconscious fields as well as extended all the way out to the point where you're actually in the astral overlays to the world, and you're interacting with other people's mental fields, interacting with other people who are dreaming, even traveling to other planets. And it's absolutely possible to perceive things in other locations, get information about other locations, and perceive information that you're able to bring back to yourself and confirm through your astral self. And this opens up a lot, because what you realize, and you know, we never win all the way to the galactic topic, and that's fine, because you know, all of these things are kind of primers to really understanding our galactic relationships. And one thing that I'll say very, you know, flat out is that you can't use radars, and you can't use light, you know, based communication systems to get to the other side of the galaxy. You can't do it. A radar is way, 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 way too slow. It's still light waves. So we send out a radar signal, and we're trying to get it to, say, you know, the Pleiades, and it's going to take over 400 years, because it's 400 light years away. Now, you know, that's just not practical. So if you're piloting a starship between here and the Pleiades, what you have to be able to do is augment the technology that you're using with your innate capacity to actually move your perceptual field to that location. And what Starship technology really does is it's literally just an externalization of some of these innate spiritual capacities which we have, like our astral body and our ability to astral project and astral travel. And this requires a mastery of thought that is applicable to all kinds of things, including coordinating how your starship is going to get there, and what's going to be going on in the location when you arrive, and how you could communicate between planets, because you can't use a phone line. And so the development of telepathy is deeply related to this, and the development of other mental capacities, like being able to see spirits and understand beings that are in a spiritual form that are not in a physical form, and beings that are literally living in the astral world, like certain kinds of fairies and other kinds of beings that also exist around Earth in the astral realm. these are sort of things that have become so familiar and normalized to the galactic community because literally that's just the level of technology that they're working on. Just like, for somebody living 500 years ago, if you told them, I'm going to pull this device out of my pocket and I'm going to press a series of numbers and I'm going to be speaking to somebody on the other side of the earth, they're going to be looking at you like, what are you? Where did you come from? Like you're like an angel or something, right? Like they're going to perceive them as like this hyper advanced being that's able to do something that's beyond the laws of reality. Like it's not even possible that you could do that. And this is the way that many humans perceive the galactic community. But it's not that it's not possible. It's just we haven't figured out the science of it yet, or in general. I've figured out a lot of that science. Nassim Harameyn's figured out a lot of that science. Robert Grant, a lot of my homies, we've got that science now, and we're working to propagate that science out and build these technologies. But the reality is, to most people, the idea that you could telepathically communicate with someone on another planet, it's just like, yeah, right. And yet they're not surprised that they think of someone and then someone calls them who's on the other side of the country. Why is that not surprising? Like, interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've already built the augmentation through our computer systems and through the internet to already get to know the fact that we can transmit information and we can communicate almost instantaneously. The only problem with that is that we're just still using light as the method to do all of that communication. And when you're sending pulses and packets of light, it's limited by light speed. And we've just not yet realized that consciousness has the capacity to already work faster than that. And that our devices can be built to give us feedback with what's going on in our own consciousness. Like if you've ever seen any of the technology where somebody puts on a headset and they're controlling a cursor on the screen, or like my friends at Singularity University, they were controlling an avatar in Second Life by thinking. Have you ever seen that tech? It's totally out. I mean, people already
actually
are doing
haven't.
This.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is people are already doing this. And it's already technology we've developed where we're getting direct feedback of what we're thinking in our mind. And the next step is actually learning how that works when you start doing things like remote viewing and astral travel, where what happens if I astral project to this location and my computer is giving me feedback and it's rendering whatever it is that I'm perceiving while I'm astral traveling. Now we're talking about a nice upgrade, right? So cool. Anyway, I could go off on, extraterrestrial tech for hours, but
yeah, but that's the thing. Like that's one of the things that we've talked about here quite a bit too, is, hey, how can we figure out how to, when we start learning how to do the out of body stuff, how do we get together and work through it together? Like, because everybody talks about it, keep doing dream journals, right? Oh yeah, I remember this and that. Well, when I'm reading these books of these advanced travelers, man, they're doing way more than that. They're not just trying to recall stuff. They can recall everything. They've visited other lives, other bodies, other planets, to where the body was just an experience, kind of like it was just a vehicle for them to move around in. So yeah, I really think that we live in a magical universe, actually, but it's not like Harry Potter magic. I think it's more like an expansive consciousness that just wants to experience everything that it can in every way. That's what it feels like to me.
And for those of you out there that are Harry Potter fans, it actually is like Harry Potter magic in some ways, because in the astral realm. And the thing is that the astral can affect the etheric and can affect the physical. It's not quite as like obvious and flashy and visible, But there's a very, very real thing to casting a spell and seeing an effect that happens. And the interesting thing, that I think most people have directly experienced is when they've gotten spells cast on them and curses cast on them by other people, not really even knowing what they were doing. But, you ever had that feeling where like somebody's really talking bad about you?
Oh, yeah.
And it, you can almost feel this pressure on you, like something is actually kind of invasively coming into your body. Well, yeah, that's actually a spell. That's a magical projection of a field being placed on you. And, it's really important to notice and to take the time. And this is something all of us got to work on. I mean, I still work on it all the time because I deal with a lot of people. I deal with a lot of things. I'm on shows. I get all kinds of projections thrown at me all the time. And noticing when I'm feeling that kind of pressure or something or some kind of sense of self that's not really what I know that I am inside, and have to go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's not me. Cancel, clear,
Yeah.
Clear my field, burn some stage. Yeah, there's a lot of things we can do to stop it, which is, as the Night Stalker is asking. The most important thing is to go straight to the core and reaffirm, I know who I am. I choose to be sovereign. I am Adam Apollo. I choose this. And this could be a variety of things. I choose to be impervious to evil. I command that any and all magic, curses, or spells cast on me be cleared and removed, canceled and resolved now. Thank you. It is done. It is done. It is done. Boom. Commanding with the power of yourself, because you are way more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And when you command with yourself that you are choosing a certain thing, the universe listens. Everything listens. Space-time listens. And there's nothing that any external person or energy or field can actually do to you if you are in command of yourself. And you can choose the level of responsibility that you are in command of. That can be your house, it can be your family, it can be your car. You can choose the level of the boundary condition that you're willing to work with at any point in time. And you may retract that boundary condition sometimes, like when things are really hectic, like if you have housemates and it gets hectic, you might want to keep that boundary condition just around your room for a while. But you're choosing your circles at all times, and you're choosing the level of interaction you have with those circles. And you can extend that level of interaction all the way out to the point where you're interacting with the collective field of the entire planet, if you're brave enough to go that far. Or interacting with the galactic community, if you're willing to go that far. But it's important to learn that, just like going out public speaking or putting yourself in front of a bunch of people, it's valuable as an experience and as a way to share your gifts and to learn. And it's also important and valuable to retreat back into your inner space and create that time and that space and that container that's just for you. That's just for you to work with yourself, because that's how you can keep that anchor and know who you are in relationship to everything else. And that's essential, especially if you're in relationship, in partnership, in a marriage, have a family. Time to get back to know who you are outside of the projections and the interconnected mental astral field of your family is so important. And with the holidays coming up, it's really good to do that before you go back in to deal with family.
So BWH is asking in the, did you get that question? Is that what you were talking about? He wants to know if you can use the astral realm to help and heal. If the astral can help and create and heal relationships, is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, generally relationships struggle because there are mental or astral belief systems that are in conflict. So you're holding certain things in your mind and you're believing those things to be true. and they're holding things in their mind and they're believing those things to be true. I mean, I'm sure you guys could relate, right? Like, this could come from an argument. This could come from all kinds of things. Relationships are usually based on a reinforcement of a belief system that we have about ourselves or about somebody else. And we're holding and reinforcing that belief system because we're afraid that if we let that belief system go, we're going to lose some part of ourselves. But the reality is that we actually are just being invited to get back to knowing really who we are. And who we are underneath this belief system is something far more great and far more dynamic. And when we can see that, and we can see that the belief that this other person is this, or we've done this, or this is this way, is not as important as who we are, we can actually extend that grace to somebody else. And we can witness that, oh yeah, you know, maybe the way that they're holding this and the way that they're saying this about me, or they're believing this about me, or they believe this is what happened actually when I think something different happened, maybe that's not as important, because I can see that maybe if I'm really curious about who this person is, then I start to realize, like, wow, yeah, they really did. They had a really intense mom, or they had a really intense dad. And like, wow, they probably dealt with a lot of really intense situations like this as a kid, and they're modeling their response based on how their parents did. Or, you know, they had a really traumatic relationship this last time that they were in other relationship, you know. And so when we start to see why people act the way they do, and we get curious about where that's coming from, and we get curious about what kind of trauma they've faced and what kind of challenges they've faced, then immediately the entire dynamic changes, because we start actually seeing the root behind the pattern. We start seeing the trauma underlying it. And the trauma is literally an astral construct. It's a mental field that's bound up like a little geometry, and it's a vortex, and that vortex that is bound up has a bunch of energy stuck in it, and it's got all of these other branches coming off of that field. And so you need to actually get to what's underneath that vortex. And what's underneath that vortex is usually a very vulnerable emotion and a very fragile part of ourselves that we've been scared to get back in touch with, because we didn't want to face that trauma again. We didn't want to look at that. We didn't want to see that happened with our parents. We didn't want to see that pain that we went through in that lifetime or with that person. And so we've put all of this stuff in insulation between us and it. But actually, what we need to do is actually get in there and feel the grief and feel the pain.
That's right.
And through feeling it, suddenly the energy starts to move. That's actually all that needs to happen, is that the energy start moving out so that it's not stuck anymore. And when we see that there's this in somebody else, you know, it's important that we have the compassionate space to be willing to go there and to hold space for what that is that's underneath there, and give them an opportunity to go there. Now, if we are not willing to face our own stuff, and we haven't faced our own trauma and our own issue, then the other person's probably not going to trust us to go there.
Right.
But if you go to the other person and you say, you know what, I realize that in this issue, in this situation that we're dealing with each other, like, wow, I've really been holding on to the way that I look at the situation, and I'm realizing that's like maybe not the way it really was, and I might be wrong, and I'm probably holding on to it this way because I feel safer like this, because, you know, whenever my stepdad did this or whatever, like it really made me feel like I had to hold my ground. And so because I've been holding my ground so strong, you know, like that's what I did with you. And I just want you to know that I acknowledge that I've been doing that. And like, I want to let that go, because I want to understand what your experience actually was, and I want to understand what was hurting around that for you, and what was painful around that for you.
Right.
And I'm here to help you find that and to look at that and to understand what that is. And wow, that kind of conversation where you're willing to just eat your own stuff and also come compassionately in support to meet somebody else in whatever's going on for them, that approach can solve, 30 years of pain, like just massive amounts of long-term pain can be dealt with so beautifully. And it's probably going to mean a lot of grief being released. And the grief is the pain getting released. It's going to hurt. It's going to be exquisitely painful. And then on the other side of that is going to be all the joy and all of the childlike wonder and the gratitude and the love that was all bound up underneath that pain.
Yeah, and that's in everybody too, man. That's like... Yeah. Even the biggest, hardest core, adult has. That's what I've seen too. Like even the people that act the toughest and the hardest, and they're so tough and hard, and they're 65 years old, and I'll never date anybody because I'm just bitter to the core, right? If you can, there's still that child in there that's hurting. I know it, man. It's in everybody, right? It's there, and they don't want to deal with it because they feel vulnerable, and they especially don't want to deal with it because they also feel judged. They feel judged, they feel vulnerable, and it does take some delicacy to get around to be able to just sit back and let someone express that, But
yeah, it does.
I think another thing too is you have to realize, and this is just from my experience. It's one thing to acknowledge somebody's pain and to be there for them, but if they start getting to where they want you to feel that pain too, that's something entirely different. They'll dig at you until you feel it, and that's not cool.
That's a codependent projection. So that tends to arise when someone has dissociated so much with their own pain. And being able to actually address the root of it, that they need somebody else to embody that pain for them to be able to see it. And
exactly,
it's not, guess what? It's not your job. It's actually not up to you. It's not your job to make them happy. It's not your job to heal that pain. And if you're in a situation where you are consistently, you're doing your best and you're coming compassionately, you're trying to surface, you're trying to get to the root, and you're sharing, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and I really would love for us to explore this. I'd love for you, maybe we can work on this. How can I help you? How can I support you with this? And they consistently deny it or redirect it back to you, and they make it about you. That's a really tough sign, because that means that there's something they're dissociating from and they're not willing to look at it. Now, it may be that you have issues too. That's usually the case.
Yeah.
But when the actual target is landing, when it's like, okay, no, we're here, let's deal with this. I'm here to hold this space for you. And then it turns back on you, that means that there's a defense mechanism set up that they're using to dissociate from the wound, and it's a way to project it outward and a way to not actually deal with it. And when that pattern happens for long enough, you have to decide, am I willing to continue working to deal with this, or am I going to choose to move on and let this relationship go, or at least in the way that I'm trying to hold it and support it right now.
Yeah, it's not easy, man. I can tell you've went through it just by talking about it. You're like, oh man, it takes you back there. Like, people don't want to look at themselves, but shadow work is not fun, man. But I'm telling you, it's so rewarding though. It's so rewarding because you want to be everybody wants to be happy, man. They want to experience a happy life. They want to experience good things. And I think talking about it is one thing, you know, because I could talk about something really cool all day long and, you know, put the images in my mind and it makes me feel really good. But to get to be that person permanently, to make that my truth, takes shadow work, right? It takes some real healing. And then it's so rewarding. I mean, you'll look at freedom in a whole new way, and you'll look at love in a whole new way too, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Some deep stuff, man.
Yeah. And it's the stuff that's underlying all the really interesting, beautiful spiritual experiences that we want to have. Like, we really want to get to these epic experiences. We want to get to know our past life selves. We want to get to know this galactic connection that we have. We want to start to see what the future of humanity can look like. Well, you know, if you're actually really serious about that, then you got to do the inner work. You got to be willing to face your stuff and work through your shadows and start facing each of your belief systems and asking yourself really honestly, is this belief system actually serving me? Is this belief system actually empowering me to be who I truly am or not? Or is this belief system causing me to judge certain people or certain things in a way that is actually creating more struggle in my life, more pain, more challenge?
Yeah,
and when you start to break that stuff down, oh man, it's like everything starts to open up. It's like, wow, you might face a couple dark nights, but boy, the sunrise is really brilliant. Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And you'll get rewarded for it too. I promise you. That's been my experience. Like, when you make it through something really tough, and you actually, I don't want to say master it, but I think you actually overcome something big, something huge like that. You get rewarded for it. That's like the universe goes, you did it. Here you go.
Yeah. I like to use the word integration because integration is such a beautiful term that really expresses that we see, acknowledge, know, understand, and have brought something in to ourselves in such a way that we now are capable of developing mastery around it, you know? And yeah, thank you, Lily, for the Florence and the Machine like moment there, because yes, exactly. It's always darkest before the dawn. And the dawn is what we're aiming for. And we know it's coming. That's the beautiful thing. So we know we can take the leap and we can face the fear and we can do the thing that we're scared to death of, because you know what? We are going to come through the other side, and it's there. It's right there on the other side of it. So, you know, I know we're running low on time here, and I want to share with you guys that even though I didn't tell you my whole galactic story in the desert, I actually did a full interview recording of that for a show that's going to be on Gaia television, and it's with a gentleman named Ruben Langdon, and he has a show on Gaia called Interviews with Ed. And ED means extra dimensionals. And this was one of the first times I kind of really laid out the entire story in full detail of everything that happened and everything that went down. And that's probably the best way to get it, so that you really can understand what I went through and how my life changed through that contact experience. And I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be released. But if you guys want to get on my mailing list, you can jump on that at adamapollo.com. I will absolutely be sending that out. I'm also going to be on George Norrie's show on there pretty soon. I'm going to go and record that here in a couple weeks. And and just getting on my newsletter is a good way. I don't send out stuff very often, but when I have big updates or I have big things that I'm coming out with, I do put it on there. So you can just go to adamapollo.com and sign up there. And in terms of my projects, if you're interested in the Jedi training work and developing, you know, basic self-mastery skills, energetic skills, foundational practices to strengthen your body, develop social, sexual mastery, mental mastery, interpersonal skills. I have all these tracks in the Guardian Alliance, which are designed for that. And that's at guardianalliance.academy, or you can just go to guardian.is. And there's ways to find out about some of the programs there. And it's, it's all just like, pay a cheap, there's free courses, and then you can pay like a cheap monthly fee and access all of the stuff in Mastery Ring 1. And I have a bunch of amazing teachers in Ring 2 that also have taught beautiful courses. And, one of them is like a 20-something long interview series of different spiritual masters from all over the world. It's just beautiful stuff. And then, if you're interested in the unified physics stuff that I was talking about, I have an academy there, and your bio of me is pretty old because there's actually about 40,000 students just in the Resonance Academy alone, okay. Which is the Unified Physics Academy. And in that's, it's based in a nonprofit. Our work is just doing, major debunking of the archaeological stories that everybody's being told. We go to sites around the world. We're going to Mexico coming up here in November. And we've already done trips to Peru and trips to Egypt, but we're going to Mexico, and we're going to the pyramids and to all of these sites, and including to some that very, very few people get access to. And we are going to be showing you like literally the underlying secrets of these places and what the true story might be in terms of the archaeology of these spots and why they're connected to Egypt and how the geometries are connected and how we know that they had a higher science and mathematics than people are being taught. So we do these in-person adventures, but we also have a bunch of courses online that teach unified physics and a deeper understanding of our relationship to space-time. So if you're into like the real deep physics of space and understanding the fabric of reality, that's the best place to go. And then if you want to practice that and apply that, the Guardian Alliance is a great academy to get into. So those are a few of the things you can find in my work. And Unify, I founded in 2012 with two brothers, and the organization has gone through a lot of iterations and kind of births and little deaths, and it's going through another transformation right now. And we're bringing in some new leadership to help really get it back on track in new ways. But it's big, and we gather literally millions of people around the world to synchronize for collective action. And that's been for Peace Day, for Water Day, for different indigenous efforts. We did stuff at Standing Rock. We did stuff for Idle No More back in 2013, and International Yoga Day. And we organize sometimes and connect, thousands of organizations to do really, really powerful collective efforts. And the whole thing is designed to eventually be a really powerful kind of collective aggregator that we can use to drive action for change in really tactile ways, and make really big differences in the world through direct action, through cleaning rivers, through doing work inside of cities, to changing political climates and coming together in times when people are very divided. So it's a big vision, and it's one that is still young in its endeavors, even as it's coming into its 7th or 8th year now. But I highly encourage anybody to find out what we're doing. You can always find out through unify.org if there's something big that we have coming up. And we generally update the site and things as we come in, a couple months or a month or so approaching a large event that we're going to do. And you can always jump on our list there and find out about those things. Yeah, and so that's a few of the things. And then my other work is in kind of spaces I can't talk about as much because I'm building new encryption systems, and I work with a mathematic, we call them the math magicians, but a math group that is solving some of the most critical mathematical problems that we're facing in this time. And as some of these problems are being solved, some of our old security systems are becoming obsolete. And especially factor-based encryptions like RSA are in real trouble right now. So we're working to build new sovereignty systems for people, and all of that's, these are like, all of these things are kind of steps towards building the kinds of systems that we need to develop starships and have the sovereignty and communication levels to build the technologies we need on the planet. And collaborate more effectively, and actually be able to have the kind of leadership in our world that we need to see ourselves through this age and into the next one, where we can become part of this incredible, absolutely exquisite galactic community that's literally waiting for us teenagers to get over our stuff and to become part of that community and share our gifts and exchange them with many other cultures.
Cool. I really appreciate your work, man. You got my full support, and I'll check out.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, man. Anything you need, and I'll check out that story on Gaia. And I'll probably use some of what you said there in the beginning about why you're here, because I feel like that's why I'm here. Even though a lot of times people need to realize that we're just humans too, working out our own stuff, but it doesn't mean that we don't know that you're hurting, and that you need to. I don't know how to explain it. You're not being shown what your true power and your true nature is. It's being held from you because of existing beliefs and paradigms, and that needs to change for sure. And I think what you're doing, regardless of any circumstance, what you're doing is fantastic work, man. So thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. You're welcome to use any clips that you want, and I'd love a recording of this too. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, I've been completely behind on the archives, but I'm going to catch that up. But yeah, it'll be there for sure. Thanks, Adam, for coming on.
Man. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, AdamApollo.com is the website. We'll put the links there in the chat as well as in the archives. We'll be right back with some